Good day. I'm Linda Baker, the Learning Director at the Center for Research and Education on Violence Against Women and Children. On behalf of the Learning Network team, I would like to welcome everyone to this resource spotlight, Connecting to Community After Intimate Partner Violence, the Building Opportunities for Women program, otherwise known as the BOW program. Our center is located on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Lenapeewak, and the Attawandaron peoples. Please think about the traditional lands you are currently situated on and join us in acknowledging and thanking the generations of Indigenous peoples who have cared for these lands and in celebrating the continued strength and spirit of Indigenous peoples. The ongoing work to make the promise of truth and reconciliation real in our communities, and in particular to bring justice for murdered and missing Two-Spirit and Indigenous women and girls across the country, informs our discussions in this resource spotlight and beyond. It is my pleasure to introduce our presenters. Dr. Jen Johnson is a program evaluator of the Building Opportunities for Women program. With 22 years of post-secondary teaching and research experience, Jen contributes pedagogical support as well as critical evaluation of the BOW program. Formerly Associate Professor and Chair of Women's, Gender, and Sexuality Studies at Thorneloe University at Laurentian, she is now currently an adjunct at Laurentian University in the School of Liberal Arts. Her research and teaching interests include feminist geographical approaches to the study of social reproduction, gender, race, and racism, and structural violence in the context of workplaces and feminist pedagogies. Bernouse Davilus is a community outreach worker with the YWCA Sudbury, where she coordinates and facilitates the Building Opportunities for Women program. She is currently a Master of Social Work student at Laurentian University, where she is researching the experience of Francophone immigrant caregivers in Northern Ontario who are caring for elderly relatives. She also worked in the violence against women sector as a counselor, providing individual counseling to victims of intimate partner violence at the Sudbury Counseling Center. Bernouse enjoys working with women and feels that it is a privilege to be able to help them gain meaningful skills to enhance their personal growth. Welcome to Jen Johnson and Bernouse Davilus. Jen, over to you. And that's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Good afternoon. Bonjour. Just so pleased to be here this afternoon. Bernouse and I are going to both introduce ourselves. Well, thank you for the lovely introduction. We are joining you today from Swakamak, which others may know as the city of Greater Sudbury or Sudbury, Ontario. We are representing, in effect, YWCA Genevra House. So Sudbury YWCA Genevra House is a women's shelter, as well as a larger organization that provides support to women fleeing intimate partner violence in the community in Sudbury District, which we'll talk about in a moment. But this is, of course, the location of the BOW program, the Building Opportunities for Women program. And so the work of the BOW program takes place on the traditional territories of Atikameksheng and Anishinaabe First Nation, as well as Wanapitei First Nation. We do this work in recognition of the Robinson-Huron Treaty of 1850 and what this treaty entails in terms of speaking for myself as a settler, and the obligations under that treaty. As an organization that supports women escaping violence, we must also acknowledge the direct connection that land-based violence has on women. We must acknowledge that the theft and dispossession of Indigenous women, of Indigenous land, is inseparable from the continued violence against Indigenous women and Two-Spirit folks, and is inseparable from the work we are doing today, whether through this program or through other programs at YWCA. We also seek to recognize the contributions of Métis, Inuit, and other Indigenous peoples that are made in shaping and strengthening the community and other communities that work in relation to the BOW program and in relation, of course, to YWCA's larger project. As settlers, again, as a settler speaking for myself, the recognition of ongoing settler colonialism must go beyond spoken words to make real our collective commitment to the truth and reconciliation, 94 calls to action in our communities, and in particular to bring justice for murdered and missing Indigenous Two-Spirit folks, women and girls across what is known to many settlers as Canada. And so the work of the BOW program takes place in this geographical context, in this historical context, and is something that I think will always be a part of the way not only the BOW program was conceptualized, but also how it's carried forward in future. So what is the BOW program? The Building Opportunities for Women program is a 12-week support group for self-identified women, those who are ages 16 and over, who then also self-identify as having experienced or feel they are at risk of experiencing intimate partner violence. I'll say something briefly about myself in a moment, but I would invite my co-presenter, Bernouse Davilus, to introduce herself.
Thank you, Jane. Good afternoon, everyone. Bonjour. It's a privilege to be here this afternoon to share in the BOW program with you. My name is Bernouse Davilus, and I am the facilitator and the coordinator of the Building Opportunities for Women program at YWCA Sudbury. So I have been coordinating this program for over 3 years now. And I am just pleased to be here to be able to share with you what is the program about as we go on for this presentation today. Thank you, Jen.
Thanks, Bernouse. The role that I joined the program in is following swiftly behind Bernouse as she facilitates these 12-week sessions. I became the evaluator, an external program evaluator of this program 3 years ago. In 2019, and have in the present sort of iteration of the program, which is gratefully funded by the Public Health Agency of Canada, I've become the lead researcher in the work that we're going to be doing over the next 4 years to test, grow, possibly scale up the program. But today we'll be focusing on what we've accomplished so far, and hopefully sharing a bit more what we've learned. And thank you for all of your wonderful introductions in the chat. It's just it's lifting my spirits a lot to see so many different people who care about these issues from near and far. It's really wonderful. So keep them coming. So by the end of our discussion today, our hope, Bernouse and I hope that you will know a little bit more about the establishment of the Building Opportunities for Women program. It's been established as both a virtual and an in-person group support for women in Northeastern Ontario. We'll tell you a bit about the BOW program curriculum itself, that 12-week curriculum, as well as the importance of including program evaluation into programs such as these, which you may be participating in or leading a similar program. So we'd like to speak to the merits of program evaluation, which allows us also to see participants' responses. So you might be wondering, although I know some of you are very close by to Swakamak, to Sudbury, YWCA Sudbury serves a region on the map that we've currently posted. And it is a map of an Ontario provincial map of Ontario that includes the various districts. YWCA Sudbury, and thus the reach of the BOW program, is in District 6, which is approximately 4 hours drive north from Toronto, 5.5 hours drive west of Ottawa. And if you kept driving another 6, 7, 8, maybe even 9 hours, depending on the roads, you'd hit the edge of Chapleau and communities a little bit further. So it's quite large geographically. The BOW program, and indeed YWCA Sudbury itself, serves for not only the city of Greater Sudbury, 150,000 people, but also the entire district. So in the map, it's marked in bright green. And if anyone is interested for reasons of accessibility in a more detailed map or in public health versions of this map, you'd be very welcome to contact us. The district itself, as I mentioned, has about 150,000 people in the city of Greater Sudbury. And in addition to that, about another 50,000 people living in this geographical area. So some of the drives to actually get to YWCA Genevra House in Sudbury quite far away. And so a lot of people do reach out for services over the phone as well, but when people are traveling, it's far. So there are 4 larger towns, plus 5 townships, 7 very, very small communities, and then other additional communities. So it's quite a large, a large geographical space, which is maybe something that other communities or programs run by people here might, you might have something in common with us in that regard. So the BOW program is delivered, has been delivered in person. And what we would do is actually move the program around the city of Greater Sudbury to outlying or central areas. And that was prior to COVID-19. After the emergency measures were put in place as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, Bernouse swiftly modified the entire program to be delivered virtually. We might want to discuss that in the discussion afterwards. But as it stands now, the BOW program can be delivered fully online in a remote format or fully in person. So over the last several years, from 2019 to 2022, 93 self-identified women participated in 12-week sessions. There were 7 sessions in total. They ranged a wide range of ages, as young as 21 years old up to 84 years old. In terms of the background of the people who participated in these sessions, there's actually a very, very wide range. In terms of formal education, some people had less than grade 10, with some participants, a few with less than grade 8 education, whereas many others may have had college or university education and a few with postgraduate degrees. The range of languages spoken in the group include English and French, certainly, as well as Urdu, Luganda, Gujarati, Hindi, Farsi, and Spanish. In any given session, approximately 30 to 40% of the participants self-identified to Bernouse as Black, as racialized, or as Indigenous. But the commonalities that the participants, the 93 women, have is their shared isolation from peers, shared isolation from family, difficulty in accessing local services, and The other commonality we noted was being unsure how to improve their access to education, access to housing, better housing and healthcare, combined with an interest, obviously, in responding to the main goal of the BOW program, which is to learn more about gendered violence in a supportive way towards some of those goals. So the BOW program itself really provides information about gendered violence, combined with improving or offering tools and resources to improve personal, social, and financial awareness and skills. The goal as a whole is a sort of a global health promotion, but the program combines knowledge of gendered violence, a critical sort of approach to understanding gendered violence, along with awareness and skills. The program is centered on a trauma-informed and culturally relevant approach applied in the following ways, either in a remote or virtual or in-person delivery to small groups, no more than 10 to 15 people at a time, with very highly skilled facilitation and support at every meeting, coupled with appropriate referrals and resources. And Bernouse can speak more to that later about how that actually looks and feels. I will mention, of course, that the resources or part of the resourcing of the program includes referrals or stepping stones for women to obtain some key things. One would be improved housing that is stable and meets participant needs. We know that many persons accessing emergency shelter services for intimate partner violence can wait anywhere from 6 to 8 months for appropriate further housing. Can be longer, it was longer during the pandemic for some people. And so resourcing women to access community services and supports is very important. Another of the stepping stones that comes out of resources and referrals are improved individual supports that are culturally and socially appropriate. So there is a wide network of community partners that YWCA Genevra House works with, where active referrals are common. People refer in and people are also referred out again. And this is done in a very supportive, consistent manner. And of course, one of the goals or stepping stones that people would also be seeking, especially after leaving a situation of intimate partner violence, is improved financial stability. Maybe not for every individual, but it is a key interest and ongoing interest of women in the program. The program methodology, the organization of the program, the leanings, the theoretical leanings of the program are actually generated out of our observations of the first 3 years of the program. So for the first 3 years, Bernouse and I and the executive director, Marlene Gorman, took careful note of what women were saying, prompted only by the question of, what is your experience? And very broad questions in the program evaluation. We can see that the methodology that we've developed is tried to be nested in their interests and needs. And so the BOW program methodology has come to be premised on the importance of 3 things: connection, reflection, and skill building. So women's ability to connect to the resources that they need and to connect with one another, the chance or the opportunity to reflect critically on the information that they are being offered, also what they're hearing or learning from other people, as well as skill building towards whatever skills they might need actually to change, to identify and then change what is happening in their lives. So these 3 elements are built into not only the curriculum, they have also come to be built into an ongoing qualitative program evaluation, which I'll talk about a little bit later. So I'm going to hand things over to Bernouse to talk about what actually happens in the BOW program.
Thank you, Jane. Okay, so now we're just gonna go over what we do on the program. So what we do is basically we talk about the different topic each week for 12 weeks. And the first week, that's really our introductions and goal setting. So that's where we will invite the women to develop connection to other women in the group, and they will present themselves. Then we will invite them to set their goals. We will present the goals of the program, and we encourage them to also set personal goals of the program, because we believe that each and every one of them has some goals in attending the program. So we will encourage them to put those goals into paper, put them somewhere they can see them on a regular basis, and they can evaluate them as they go through the program, see if they are meeting their goals, or if they are on the way to meet their personal goals and attending the program. Then our second week, we talked about abuse and unhealthy relationships. So um, intimate partner violence is very important in our group, and we talked about that from the very beginning. So we believe that it's a large topic. We know that the topic on violence against women is very large. All 12 weeks could be about violence against women, but instead of doing this, we have 2 specific weeks on that, and we talked about different subjects. So the second week we talked about how the women attending the program can identify unhealthy relationships. So the early signs of abuse, what are these? We also talked about, later on we will see one of the examples of what we use, and during one of those sessions we at some point we will watch a film about intimate partner violence that give example of what can happen early on, how they can spot the sign, and how they can look for help on when those signs appears. Then in our third week in the program, we continue our conversation on violence against women, intimate partner violence. We talked about staying safe and free from abuse. So again, at this specific week, we explore with the women how they can actually stay safe. One of the things we use is we talked about the circle of abuse, or the versus cycle of abuse. So that's where we talk about when the abuse happened, and after that we talked about the honeymoon phase that follow. We know that after the abuse there will be the honeymoon phase, when the perpetrator will promise that it's not gonna be happening anymore, and everything that comes with it, the women's experience through these stages, and the perpetrator experience as well through all these stages. And then we talked about the tension building phase. So that's when the promises that being made during the honeymoon phase are not being kept anymore, and things are starting to go slowly back into the incident, which is the incident of abuse. So we talked about this very vicious circle, how the women can actually spot it, because sometimes when you are into this unhealthy relationship, abuse relationship, it's going to be more challenging for the victim to actually realize that the abuse follow a circle that and it's can be challenging for them to step out into that circle. So we talked about that, and I would show you later on. We also talked about the power and control wheel, which some of you might be familiar with, which is and we know that this power and control wheel has been changing over years, adapting to other communities, for example, African American communities, Black communities, LGBTQ plus communities. Also, it's also developed for relationship with children. So, but the ones we really use, it's the generic original ones that was first developed by the Dulwich models. So that's when we explore how the power and control, how it goes into an abusive relationship. And we go through all the stages, the emotional abuse, the physical abuse, financial abuse, all those kind of things. And we also explore how victims usually respond to those stages, and how the perpetrator, on the other hand, also respond to them as well. In our fourth week of the programs, we talked about stress management. So we talked about what is stress and why we experience stress. We talked about healthy and unhealthy stress and how to recognize it. We developed the tips, the techniques, and the coping strategies to deal with stressful situations as well, especially in a context of intimate partner violence. In our fifth week of the program, we talked about communication skills. So we define what is communications. We also talked about the different types of communication skills and the patterns that we follow. And we explore as well how the pattern of our communication skills is also sometimes a result of how we're making our decision, as we will see in the decision-making session that follow after, how the way we communicate and our feelings, our needs, especially in the context of intimate partner violence, how we stand for ourselves as victim of intimate partner violence, how communications can come in handy in there, and how we can approach the situation with the other partner. After that, we talked about responding to change. So during this session about change, it's a very large topic because there's so many different kinds of change, but in the context of the BOLD program, we focused on changes that affect the women, changes that affect their personality in the context of intimate partner violence, how this situation changed them, or what are the changes they have to make. Some of them will have to flee that situation, and it's a big change for them. Some will have to checking into a shelter for women, and that with the dependent, which is the kids, at some point the kids will have to change school, for example. So those all are changes the women have to deal with, and at the same time they are dealing with the abuse and all that comes with it. So we explore how we can actually manage how we respond to those change. Some of them we are not able to, sometimes the victim is not able to actually influence the change process, but they can influence how they respond to that change. So we explore how all of the many things that come with those changes, how they can respond to it, how they can navigate with it, how sometimes they would even need a professional to help them navigate that change process. So that's what we discussed during this responding to change workshop. Then there's another week about the change subject. So this one is called the change challenge. So that's when the women will come up with examples. For those that feel comfortable enough, we invite them to share what is a change they are going through. And then we do some scenarios, exercises of how they can apply some techniques to those change process, how they can, face in that change and make it a better experience for themselves and their dependent. Then after that week, in our 8th week of the program, we talk about self-esteem and feeling good about ourselves. So a lot of us may know about this, that when a victim, especially women in our context, is living in an abusive relationship. So one of the first things that is being impacted by the abusive situation is their self-esteem. and how they see themselves. And some of them struggling to feel good about themselves because of the situation they are finding themselves to. So during this workshop, we talked about the activities they can do to actually help them lifting their self-esteem and taking the self-esteem back, feeling good about themselves, because we believe that in order to be able to go through all this challenge, we have to be able to feel good about ourselves. We have to check in with our self-esteem and see how we feel about those situations. So we talked about that in our 8th week. And then the next week after that is looking at our labels. So this specific workshop is where we invite the women, because what happened, and especially in the context of intimate partner violence, sometimes victims are not able to go back, to travel physically and time to change some of the situation. But emotionally, we can actually travel back and see how we felt and how those words that were how we respond to those mean words, bad words that were being said to us. So this workshop here sometimes can be very emotional for the participants, especially for those who was unfortunately a victim of intimate partner violence, because this invite them to travel back to a time that wasn't pleasant for them, to a stressful time for them, a trying time for them. But we believe that one of the way for those that on their journeys of healing, one of the way of doing this is sometimes we're gonna have to travel back in those times, see how those words that was said to you, the physical abuse that happened, the emotional abuse that happened, the financial abuse that happened, how did you feel about it? And now how those words influence how you see yourself. So that's why we invite them to look at our labels. So the labels itself, you might wonder, what is the labels? The labels is the things that was being said to you and you believe in them. For example, some of the participants will give me example where the partner make them believe they were stupid. It's because of their fault that the abuse happened. And because that was being said over time, over and over again, they began to believe that they are stupid. They begin to believe that they are not a good mother enough. They are not intelligent enough. They are not able to make good decisions for themselves or for their family. So those are the labels being impressed on them. You are not good enough. You are stupid. So we invite them to look at those labels and evaluate them right now. We bring them to realize these labels working for you right now. If they are not working for you, what can you do about it to move on? Some will say, well, now I recognize my self-worth now, and now through counseling, to therapy, I realized that I wasn't the one at fault. I realized that I wasn't stupid. I realized that I am brilliant. I am intelligent women. So slowly, doing this exercise, this can help them shifting those negative labels that were being impressed on them during the abuse. And some of them are still going through these abusive relationship as well, because not all participants attending the program is on the other side of the violence. Some of them are still experiencing, and those workshops are still relevant to them and helping them realizing if the labels are working or not working for them anymore. Then in our 10th week of the program, we talked about decision making, decision. We all have make decision, and them as well, they make decision on an everyday basis. Doesn't matter if it's small decision, big decision, they do make decision, and there's a pattern to this. So we see what are the pattern of your decision making. Are you someone, for example, who for every decision you have to consult somebody else? Do you need somebody else's opinion? Do you let somebody else make that decision for you? Do you let that decision to fate? and whatever happen later on? Or do you wait until there's no decision to be made and then you live with the consequences? So that's what we actually talked about during this decision-making workshop, and we invite them to think about their own pattern and see if there's anything they would like to change, because for each pattern of decision-making, there's consequences, there's a result, and the way you make your decision, the outcomes of your decision reflect exactly the pattern you follow as an individual. So that's what we discussed during our decision-making workshop. Then during our 11 week, we talked about budgeting, surviving on a low income. So for this particular workshop, we usually have a financial advisor from the Sudbury Community Service Center, who come and do this workshop for us. So he's been doing it for us for over 3 years, which is great. So for this one, he will invite the women to use their bank account to understand their spending and their income, because now we're talking about how to survive on a low income, how they can cut on their spending, better understand how you spend your money, because even in spending money as well, we have a behavior, we follow a pattern. So he explored that with the women. He talked about all those kind of things and helped them understand how to better live on a low income. And he also, during that workshop, he also talked about some of the women will say, well, I look forward to a big purchase, for example. How can I save for that while I'm on a low income life? So he will explain how you can make small plans in order to reach that goals, to make your big purchase. How some will be looking to increase their credit weight. He will actually give advice on how you can actually increase in your credit rating. So that's what we discussed during this workshop. Then during our last week, we talked about affirming ourselves. So we believe that being, as Jane mentioned earlier, one of the things that the programs do is connection. So the women build connection with other women. So we believe being together for 11 weeks. So they, even though those connections are not, gonna be sustainable after, they can be unsustainable after the 12 weeks, let's say, if they've never met again. So those connections might not stay, but for some, they develop long-term connection relationship with other participants and the group. So I invite them to affirm yourself. So we reflect on what we've learned during the past 11 weeks. We reflect on what was being shared, because the women, they share a lot during those groups. And one of the benefits of this program is them learning from other participants, sharing their experiences. So we reflect on that, we affirm ourselves, everything that we've learned during those 11 weeks. So that it's like a warm-up session. We wrap everything up and then we say a goodbye, which is not always easy to say, but we have to after 12 weeks. So that's generally what we do and doing the programs with the women. So for now, as again, if you have questions, put them in the Q&A. We can look into your questions after. So I'm gonna pass the mic back to Jane, which gonna take over about the program evaluations.
Wonderful. Thank you, Bernouse. I think you referenced the power and control wheel, but I was wondering if you wanted to say a little bit more about this graphic novel. This is another example of a resource that you've used.
Sure.
We actually started using it because one of our community members, an Arabic speaker, and she recommended and had commented on the graphic novel and said, well, why aren't you using this? Because it's a resource that is translated into many languages.
Yes.
So it's that graphic novel is a resource from another city for the most part, but we found roots here and a great use for it here too. Sorry, Bernouse.
No, that's okay. Thank you. Thanks. So this is the power and control that I mentioned earlier that we used in our second week of the program. So it's basically the circle in black is the physical violence, the sexual violence, all the abuse that happen, and then inside of the wheel, which is where the power and the control happen, we will find the financial abuse, the emotional abuse, the isolation, minimizing, using the children, using male privilege, using economic abuse, coercion, and threats. So we go through this with the women. Some of them will quickly recognize themselves, unfortunately, into that wheel, and then we let them know that not all abusive situations go through this wheel, but generally most of them will follow a pattern and with this wheel. Then another visual that we use during our third week of the program is this graphic novel here, specifically the story of causes. So this one was developed by the Ontario Council of Agencies Serving Immigrants, and it's a great resource that I really like using in the groups. Why? Because it gives us, as you can see, it's all immigrants women telling their stories of either domestic abuse, intimate partner violence, workplace abuse. So there's all different kind of stories in there. And one of the reasons why we appreciate and using it in the group is, first of all, it's real stories from real women that have those experiences. And other things is as well, our group is very diverse, as Jane mentioned earlier. We have women coming from different areas, different countries that attend our group. So it's good that we have them look at the different perspective, and causes story that we usually talked about and explore in our program is a young woman that was living overseas. Then she met someone from in the internet. So they fall in love. He sponsored her. She came in Canada, and then with her permanent resident, all of it, he promised her dream was to open a restaurant. He promised he will work with her. But the minute she arrived here with no support, no connection at all, he isolated her, and that's where the abuse started. Any promises that were made during the process wasn't kept. At some point, he took away the keys to the house. She couldn't go outside. He cut her access to the bank account. So eventually, they will go out in a restaurant. She will meet somebody that's helped her, get out of that situation. And the abuse was enormous, and it was physical, emotional, and he made sure to beat her in places that people will not notice, not in the face, but bruises was all over her body. So we explore those case scenarios with the women as a way of helping them see the early signs, how it started. And some women will give example of when that happened to them, or when that happened to somebody else that they know. So we wanted to share these ones with you. When they share, the slides will be shared later on with you. The reference is there. It will be easy for you, to click on the link and go and explore. That's my work for you, or your organizations as well. Explore the stories. They are great. I really encourage you, go and look, get a look in there. Okay, so I think, Jane, now I'm gonna pass the mic. We can lead us to the evaluations tools.
Thank you so much, Bernouse. And thank you also to Diane for sharing that resource right in the chat immediately. And I see the questions coming in, so that's wonderful. So to evaluation, in a lot of, when you're running a wonderful program, it's easy to run forwards into the program, deliver the program, it builds, it grows, it has a life of its own. But our experience is that including some element of evaluation is good for your own critical reflection, and it's often very good for the participants as well, because it makes sure that, you know, in your objective to deliver something, that it's actually being received in the way that you hoped it might. You might discover something new as well. So at the Building Opportunities for Women program, we've included a series of evaluation tools that are produced in very plain language, given that participants may not speak English as a first language, and we will be producing the evaluation tools in the French language as well for future offerings. I see questions about delivery of the language of delivery of the program is primarily English, but French translation is often provided as needed. And other languages, we don't have the capacity at this point to deliver the program in other languages, but there's no reason in future that it couldn't be scaled up, changed, modified. And frequently women will actually support one another in translating certain aspects of the program. So I just wanted to acknowledge that question there. The tools themselves include, as a first part, some intake forms. These are very instrumental. They involve collecting information about people's contacts, as much or as little as they want to give, but enough for the facilitator to actually run the program. They include documents or statements around confidentiality, participation commitment to the full 12 weeks, and of course, a consent to participate. The other part of the intake form includes some quite sensitive questions around people's social or cultural identity. So they're invited to identify themselves using the language and terminology that is most comfortable for them. That could be in terms of their religious, ethnic, or racial identity, their gender or sexual orientation. And we do also ask about whether they've, at that time, identify as having experienced intimate partner violence or other forms of violence they might disclose as well at that point. But it allows us to ensure that we can compare, you know, how people are responding after the 12 weeks versus when they enter the program. So those intake forms are pretty important. We then offer a weekly opportunity for participants to evaluate. So someone had asked in the questions how often people meet, and it's for 2 hours once a week. And participants receive either a paper document if it's in person, or a link immediately after the remote session with time to complete a very brief survey, 4 or 5 questions at the most. It's mostly clicking, opportunities to add short phrases in the language of their choosing. We do a midway evaluation. Please start doing something new, stop what you're doing right now, or continue doing this. It's great. Very, very brief. A final evaluation with a few more questions. And then 3 to 6 months later, the facilitator does follow up again. So we've already sought their permission to follow up again to talk about how things have gone. Sounds like a lot, but it's actually not. It's a very small investment of time for a lot of really important information that allows Bernouse especially to, I've seen you pivot very quickly to change things as needed. And it's not about egos or anything. It's about changing to make sure that what's being delivered is being received. So as I said before, the BOW program methodology, the importance of the program itself matches up with how we've tried to collect information. So one of the observations that we made early on was that women would just explode with the response. I loved sharing. What was the most important to you about the session? The sharing, the sharing, the sharing. It's actually overwhelming how many times people can say sharing, but actually hearing or reviewing or encountering how other people have experienced the world was one of the primary things that we learned, and then were able to kind of ask about in these evaluations. So participants in these groups, whether they they may have known before, been previously turned away, but all of these participants are entitled to real services from public health, from Sudbury Housing, from their provincial government, and more. They're entitled to many, many things, and they may not be receiving all those things. So the goal here is to connect with other people. The opportunity for self-reflection is embedded right in the evaluation process. So by expecting that you will be asked your opinion and your opinion will be respected on the basis of these program evaluations is, I think, is an accomplishment in and of itself. It's important that the participants know they've been heard and that they're being responded to. So in being able to reflect and give an opinion and have it heard is very, very important. So participants will say things like, in this group, I learned how to feel good about myself. The responses from other participants sharing major changes taught me a lot. So not only being heard, but having a chance to reflect on what you know and what others know is a key takeaway. It's part of the goal of the program, as well as how we've structured questions. Skill building. When someone says from this group, I've learned how to be confident, that's very rewarding, I would say, for anyone who cares about gendered violence or other forms of structural violence. When someone learns how to be confident and feel confident and speak back, this is really important. So the format of the BOW program allows for very focused thematic discussions into which resources can be introduced. And we hope always that these are the right resources. They can be changed as necessary, but participants are prompted in these evaluations to offer suggestions about topics, new topics, about skills maybe we haven't even touched on that they'd be interested in knowing. But one of these skills, if it can be called a skill, is how to be confident. So it's it was very, very useful feedback to us. Outcomes. Building in this program evaluation, allowed YWCA to see where the program is being, where it's going. If changes had to be made, we can account for those. But when we look at the outcomes, participants describe 6 months after their group. They describe change. They do describe change in their lives. Maybe not every single participant, but it's frequent that we read a lot of things have changed since I joined the program. And then the person lists off all the things that have changed. One that always, that struck me from the very first time I read it, I'm sure for Bernouse as well. This person said, I've been able to protect myself and children by using the knowledge I've gathered from the program. I've also been able to identify my needs and have worked towards it, or towards those needs, knowing what those are and how am I going to get there? I might not be there already, but I'm getting there. I know how to get there. Another outcome that we found at the 6-month mark were things like people saying, I learned a lot. Don't let others always take benefits from you. I have more self-confidence than I thought. So maybe that self-confidence was already there. Maybe it's in conversation with others. Maybe it's in reflection afterwards, but it's there. We also ask participants, as we're exploring, how should the program be changed, expanded, modified? Are there other audiences for this type of programming? Participants will say things like, I wish I knew these things when I was married some years ago. So I wish I'd had these tools a long time ago. Sometimes participants have suggested, can I bring my boyfriend? My sons should attend this program so they know what gendered violence looks like, and I want them to look out for themselves as well. Or, we should have a session with husbands included. People have also suggested that. And the BOW program is not at the point of scaling up to something like that, although there are other programs focused on boys and men in the community, anti-violence programs. But these are the ideas the participants are offering. So we're keeping careful note of those. Young girls who are about to start relationships should take this program, said one participant, so they can learn about finances, their rights, and how to be independent. Very concrete suggestions. So finally, to end off, the BOW program is certainly not a substitute for individual and institutional accountability for violence itself or for ending violence in Northeastern Ontario. It's not a substitute for the responsibilities of organizations to take violence seriously or for individuals to stop engaging in violence. It is a program, though, that helps and addresses the needs of participants to reconnect with community after intimate partner violence. And some participants tell us they even feel it could be preventative of violence in people's lives. The BOW program's approach is to promote connection, reflection, and skill building, and it entitles participants to access resources from a variety of sectors to which they should be entitled. It sounds very simple, but they are entitled to access public health resources, housing, social services, publicly funded education, and they're entitled to accurate financial knowledge as well. So in conclusion, we think the BOW program is starting to accomplish these things in very small numbers. And we're very keen to hear, to answer your questions. There are a lot. I'm going to stop talking. We had questions for you, and we can certainly come back to them. You know, whether you think there are certain features of the BOW program that would really work in a community that is close to you. If not, what would you change? And if you happen to lead a program similar to this one, we'd love to hear from you. Our contacts are listed in the slides, which have been shared. And we'd absolutely love to hear from you. So I can come out of the slides if you wish, or our facilitators will bring us out, and we might want to move to the Q&A.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jen and Bernouse. And you're right, the questions have been flying in, and we would really like to move right into some of the questions, not ignoring the questions you'd like to ask our participants. And in fact, maybe we could ask participants to share some of their responses to those questions while we're also asking you to answer some other questions. Diane and I have sort of divided the questions. We thought we'd start, you've answered a lot of them, but we thought we'd start with some of the more practical questions about the program, about the evaluation, and work through those because they'll be much quicker. And then we'll get into the meatier questions in the latter part. Does that make sense? All right. So the first one, and my apologies if you did share this, but there were a lot of people interested in what is the name of the film, Bernouse, that you show in week 2?
The name is A Love That Kills. I might have to put it in the chat. And it is a very old film, but still relevant, unfortunately, still relevant to our context of what we are seeing in terms of, you know, intimate partner violence. I believe it was come out in 1992. So it's A Love That Kills. I will put the name in the chat as well.
Okay. And Bernouse, just, I know that people were, you know, concerned, and not concerned, but interested in how you dealt with the potential triggering of the, like when the content may trigger the participants. Do you find that that happens with the use of that film, and what kinds of safeguards do you build in when you show a film like that?
Yes, it's happened more often than I thought, honestly. So what happened during this second week and third week that we talk about violence, we watched that film and also the example of Nisha. We, from the beginning and the week before, I let the women know, I warned them that we will be, you know, talking about some topics or seeing some content that can actually be triggering. They can also open old wounds for some of them. We invite them to, at any point, if they feel uncomfortable, and they can disconnect themselves and send me a message, and I can actually connect with them afterwards, after the session. Or if they feel like they are not ready for this conversation at all, they can disconnect for the day and send me a message. I will check in with them after the session. So it's just happened last week, because we had the second week last week where one participant wasn't able to follow, and after this session I was able, to reach out and debriefing with her. So it's happened, yes. But we warn them and let them know this can happen, and give them the chance, to disconnect if they are not ready.
Thank you, Bernice.
Thank you. And then we had a question. You mentioned that social service agencies refer women. Are there also women who self-refer? If so, is there a difference in how referred and self-referred women respond to the program?
Go ahead, Jen.
Oh, no, I was gonna, well, actually, it's quite an important point. No one is, I would say that Bernouse can comment whether there's an equal number of self-referrals, but there are two primary ways. You might be involved with another organization, and someone might suggest, hey, I know this program at YWCA, or you might see something in YWCA social media and decide to self-refer. Absolutely no one is, it's not an intention of the program to accept participants who are compelled by a court order or some sort of court mandated programming to attend such a group. In fact, the intention is to avoid that. Obviously, anyone can come, but the idea is that no one is compelled to be there. It's a choice to try the program. And Bernouse, maybe you could mention just briefly how you when you meet with people for the first time, the word is out there. You spend a spare bit of time describing, before someone agrees to join.
Definitely, yes. When the referrals are being made, self-referrals, they come into me, usually. Then first thing we will do is give them more information about the program, and some will ask what they can expect. Some will wonder if it's a good fit for them. So after hearing more about it, they might decide or not to join the program. But even though it is, a self-referrals, it's another referrals from other community partners, they are all treated the same way. Respond the same way or differently. Some might respond, the same way. Some might actually respond differently. It's all depend on their personal experience. So that's where the difference come from. Some of them, as we mentioned from the very beginning, would actually be a victim. Some will actually be in that relationship as we speak right now. Some will on the healing journeys. Some will actually just be there to explore what is intimate partner violence. They haven't experienced it. Some don't even know the knowledge. Some even don't know the things that we discuss, the early signs. Some didn't even know about them. So it's all, the responses are based on the women's personal experiences, whether or not they were a victim of intimate partner violence.
Thank you.
One of the, just wanted to share with you, if you haven't been noticing, because you're having to focus on the answers and we're able to sort of look at the chat as well. But some of our participants commented, Bernouse, that their programs also use dated videos and sort of suggested that there's a need for some updated ones, but they don't exist. And some other people said that they use some movies, such as Sleeping with the Enemy, or more about Hollywood movies that can be helpful as well. So just wanted to bring that into our conversation in the virtual room here. There's a lot of interest in whether there's a lot of interest in whether you have a wait list for the BOW program. And if you do have a wait list, do you provide any supports to the women that are on the wait list, or how long might they be on the wait list, and all of those good things?
We do. We always have a wait list for the program. One of the reasons is after the third week of the program, we don't welcome new participants. So anyone who's come after the third week, or if we reach our capacity, we will put them on a wait list for the next program. So the wait time can be 12 weeks, 15 weeks, depending on if they wanted to join our very first week, if we reach our full capacity, or after the third week. So anywhere from 12 weeks to 15 weeks by the time we start the new group. If we offer additional referrals, it depends. If let's say someone call me and say that they are looking to attend this program and they are going to some kind of an intimate partner violence situation, I could refer them to our shelter, YWCA Sudbury shelter. Sometimes I refer to the Sudbury Counseling Center, which offers individual counseling for women. So it's all depend. We don't do this all the time, but if we have the question, we have done it before, we will make those referrals, indirect referrals to other community agencies. Yes.
Thank you.
And just while you were chatting now, a couple of questions came in all at once, wondering what the capacity of the program is and whether it's the same online and offline.
I could take that one. I've encouraged Bernouse to take as many as 17 to 20 people to accept that, as many as that, because we know that a few people will end up dropping out. And I've seen Bernouse run program. I think we've all been like, this is amazing, with up to 15 people, and run it very successfully. Like the evaluations don't change. People are still satisfied with what is happening. So that group of, and this may be similar for other people or organizations running programs, you can afford to accept a few more people and still ensure that most are probably going to get what they're looking for within the program. So hopefully that answers the questions.
Yes, thank you.
Another one that there's great interest in is, are there booklets or materials that are actually given to the participants? That's the first part of this multi-questioned question.
We do share resources, and we along the way. For example, for every week, I will send out the materials, the shareable materials that we're gonna be using, because we make a lot of exercises. We explore a lot of examples as well. So most of these examples, scenarios, techniques are already there, prepared on a worksheet that I shared with participants. But in terms of having a booklet specifically for the BOW program, we haven't developed that yet. The discussion is there, and we've been exploring the options, but we haven't, prepared a booklet specifically for the BOW program to share with participants. Mm-hmm.
So a part of the program is in Bernouse's head at this point, is that right?
And the wonderful thing about the funding from the Public Health Agency of Canada is that we had envisioned producing a facilitator's manual, but it may actually be, 4 years from now, talk to us, maybe it'll be a manual for participants who want to take that away with them. It's hard to know yet how that's going to develop.
And that's part of the next part of the questions that go with this question is there training for the BOW program? So one, do you think it's relevant for other areas similar to the area that you are providing this program to? And is there training if somebody else wanted to implement it in their region?
Yeah, I think that is something that we're coming to. We can see that there's a need and maybe an interest for that, for cross training, even, for facilitators, with the BOW program to meet another group and vice versa. But in terms of a structured deliverable, no, not at this point. So yeah, it's something I think YWCA would really welcome the opportunity to share in that way. Now, I see a couple of questions around the delivery of the program. I see a couple in the chat, and then it was around, just to clarify the program, it can be delivered in person, and it has been successfully delivered in person. Always the same place, same location, always lots of snacks and food, either on-site childcare or money to take home to pay for your childcare if you have dependents, case-by-case basis, or completely online. And so for us with such a wide geography, this is a huge opportunity. COVID was bad, is bad. It did prompt this program to start to be delivered remotely, which means that actually we're able to reach more women across the district. So if you actually are in Sudbury District and you'd like it to be advertised in your community for future recruitment sessions, please do send Bernouse your name. It'd be lovely to hear from you. The other issue that I saw come up in the questions is that these are the questions that I love, very exciting. You're suggesting different topics. Can these topics be covered? So for example, someone mentioned gambling abuse, like financial abuse through gambling or through addictions. The theme of addictions comes up. Reproductive health has already come up in the chat. The topics are almost endless that could be added or integrated into the program, and all of those are good suggestions. I think one of the strengths of the program is that of the 12 weeks, material can be swapped in and out, and the program evaluation allows the facilitator to see what is potentially of interest. So in some sessions, not all, women will ask for additional material on financial abuse. So they do the credit counseling, the presentation from the credit counseling, and they say, awesome, I've got a better hold on my bank account and what credit is, but I'd like to know why, what are people doing with this aspect of their finances? And not every group will say that, but then that gives Bernouse the flexibility to add in that material. So did you see I know we're starting to get close to time. Linda and Diane, we can take.
No, we can take some more questions, and we're going to shift you now to questions that came in earlier during the presentation, just so those people don't think we're ignoring them. And one of the questions I'll start us off with and then turn it over to you, Diane, is people are interested in the specific ways you make safe online and offline spaces, but in how do you create that culture of safety, that safe space for women to share? Because sharing was so important. So obviously we're assuming after listening to this that they did feel safe, and people want to know, how did you do that? What kinds of things did you do?
Okay, so first of all, what we do is every women attending the program sign a confidentiality statement space where we ask that everything discussed in the group stays in the group, and we also let them know, because we are in a group settings, I am able to protect their information with me, but not with the other participants. For that reason, we ask that everybody share only what they feel comfortable sharing, and do not feel pressure to share anything that you don't feel safe and comfortable sharing. And adding to that, we all know being on a Zoom platform, for example, this also restricts how I control the environment, because I'm not able to control if somebody's listening behind the door. So we talked about that with the women as well, and asked them to be in a space where you will be there for that 2 hours, be there by yourself to attend those groups, and please share what you feel comfortable sharing. What you do not like somebody else to know about it, please don't share it, because at this point me as the facilitator is not able to control that information behind these points. But I can tell you that like online and in person doesn't change it. the women still shares their experiences, which is great. And you can feel that by the second week, some of them will develop that feel safe enough to to speak up. The ones that were probably more more quiet, speak up and share things. So as they go through, they feel that sense of belongings to the program. This give them more more power to share their experiences with other women.
Just very related to that, and to follow up on it, a participant was wondering what kind of protection is there for women accessing the BOW program, if any, in the case that perpetrators find out that they are enrolled in the program?
No, you're on mute.
Okay, I was gonna ask if you wanna take that. Okay, that's okay. Yes, so sometimes it's seems like I have examples for everything this past week. For this past week, I do have a participant that joined the program who told me she would have to disconnect because her partner is around in the house. And she said, give me a call after the program. So I was able to connect with her. She said she was in a room alone, but she didn't want to take the weeks as he wasn't expecting to be home that early. So she didn't want to take the weeks. So those kind of things happens, especially when you are working with women. I think one of the plus on meeting in person is, that person is there with you in person, and the chances that the perpetrator following them sometimes are minimized. But being on Zoom or on an electronic device, we know there's a way, to find out where you were, the website you've been working with. What we do, we talked about them. We sensibilize the women about it. We let them know this can happen. And if there's a way that we can actually help to minimize it, we can certainly do this. For example, for those who would like to access a computer outside of their home, I would offer the option to use a space at the YWCA Genevra House, where they will have a computer available for them and a space available for them for 2 hours to participate in the program. And after that, they can go home. And some of them have done it before, so they have this option as well.
There's also the opportunity to describe the BOW program as very broadly as a support group, but there are so many topics within the program that women could describe it to a partner or a family member in whatever way they see fit. I think that will change a little bit now. Like there's actually in the advertising of the program some pretty good language that people might roll off. So where were you? Well, this is what it was. And I realize that is not foolproof, but there's a lot of thought given to that, and it might be a case-by-case basis. Yeah, but it is a concern, absolutely. Thank you for those questions.
One of the questions that has come in quite early was how, as a facilitator, you deal with situations when a victim of intimate partner violence discloses during the program, the BOW program, that her children were or continue to be at risk of being abused by the partner. And we know the reporting laws, and just wondering how you navigate that with the women.
Thank you. That's a great question. And while that has not happened before, during the 7 weeks that I facilitated, we know that the possibility is there. So from the very beginning, and the intake package, when the women are signing forms to join the program, they do sign the form that says, if you let me know that you are in danger, if you let me know that there's child abuse involved, there's the children are in danger, I will have to disclose that to the proper authorities without your consent. So if that were to happen, so I wouldn't even need their consent to disclose that to the proper authorities. We will look into their cases.
It's in some ways, it's a matter of informing people as a registered social worker, and then as an agency that provides supports. You know, teachers, your doctor have a duty to report. And so here, I think the most important thing is understanding that programs like this have an obligation to inform women so that they can make choices about what they're sharing. Because, you know, we are working in a larger system with a duty to disclose. But the other concern, of course, is making sure, I mean, maybe that person has, you know, availed themselves of CAS before, but, you know, the right kind of help was not received. Is there another way now that in connection with the BOW program, the right kind of help could be offered? But it's a very, thank you to whoever asked that question. It's a really, really important one.
And I think so many programs that are supporting survivors of intimate partner violence, it's a challenge. It's one that people delivering services really struggle with at times.
Thank you. There is a question about the week when you discussed labels. And it said, when labels are discussed, do structural or societal labels come up, like ableist or racist labels? If so, how do you go about challenging those labels with participants?
Great. Some of the labels that come up regularly, yes, racist labels comes a lot. And Jane can tell you, and especially in the evaluations forms, they mention it and they talked about it. Societal labels haven't come up yet, but I do not, get it out of the picture. This might happen to future groups. So if that were to happen, I will definitely share the resources, local resources. We have the crisis line, and we'll check in with them and see if everything is okay at this point, even though those labels are labels that actually happened in the past. But if they're still impacted how they see themselves, so there might be a need to, to talk to a professional about it. And other labels that comes up, is sometimes past abuse from their parents, moms, or an abusive dad or a alcoholic dad who, was swearing, calling them names as little kids, because those exercises ask them to think back when they're 8 years old or 8 to 12, 15 years old. So that's very young. That's the labels that's why this workshop is sometimes can be emotional for them at sometimes as well, because this, you have to travel back and revisit those experiences. But these are the labels that comes up. You are not good enough. You are not intelligent. You will make nothing out of your life. You will be just a junkie on the street. These are the labels that come up regularly. But what is good about it is they are able to reflect and see how those labels influence their life as an adult. Does this label still guide you? Do you still believe in it? If yes, how does it serve you? If it doesn't serve, what can we do to change it if you're willing to change it? So that's the kind of discussion we have doing this, looking at our labels session.
Thank you.
It's just so we have to remember to ask you more questions. We get so involved in the answer that we forget our role. One of the questions that we wanted to ask you, Jen, was in terms of doing the evaluation, is there a way that you found at this point of sharing the results with the participants? And I especially am curious about especially given you do that wonderful midterm and the longer term follow-up, and just wondering what your thoughts are on sharing with them the results of that evaluation.
Yeah, we have big plans and high hopes. What we've found, that Bernouse and I have found in these past years, is that anywhere after 6 months, people tend to have moved, changed phone numbers. They're very much in transition in their lives. So the program is often catching people at a moment where they've decided to do something, not sure what maybe, but they're making big plans. And so in terms of sharing back information, you know, we had visions of maybe doing focus group or just a follow-up visit run by the facilitator, by Bernouse, you know, with food. But to actually get people together was really challenging. So we will probably be engaging in shorter communications that are very public through, to a certain extent, social media, but also possibly public presentations that are accessible and local. We haven't really figured out where or what or how long. But we know that past participants are out in the community. So of those that might be physically located close to Genevra House, we know that folks are watching and listening. Yeah, it's so sharing back is really, really important. You know, to see that in other groups at other times, women have said the same things, or that they disagreed with, you know, you thought the program was great, but maybe that person was like, it was missing this. That's information we want people to have out there. So yes, we've thought about it. Have we done it yet? Not quite.
No, but great that you've already thought of some possible strategies for doing that.
Yeah.
That's good to hear. You know, we are out of time, and I want to just share that I'm sure Diane really caught that messages too, but there's been so many wonderful messages for both of you in the chat and for this amazing program. But one of the messages that I want to bring us to a close with is that too often in the busyness of the violence against women, the gender-based violence sector, we don't have a chance to share with each other about our programs and to learn from each other and to get ideas. And I think people so appreciated both of you sharing about the BOW program. And you can tell by the questions, many people are involved in providing supports to survivors. And I think it's just been a wonderful exchange. And we want to thank you both for the time that you took in preparing this talk and for sharing so openly about what you have done, what you hope to do, and some of the findings that you have, what you've learned from the women that you've been working with. It's very, very meaningful to us all. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much. Thank
And
you.
we'll look forward to
Thank
learning
you.
more as you proceed and carry on for the next 4 years. And in the meantime, Diane and I just want to again express our appreciation and to bring this resource spotlight to a close.